The IMF says the Democratic Republic of Congo is set to become sub-Saharan Africa's fifth largest economy this year, driven by a mining boom and a stronger currency. The country's finance minister told us reforms and investment are also helping drive growth beyond the resources sector.
26 year, we are predicting with IMF a rise of 6% of non-mining GDP growth. So the balance that we're bringing in is going to help to put added value chain, creating more jobs for our people and taking them and bringing them out of the poverty.
Where does that come from, that non-mining GDP growth, and how do you support that?
Yes, it comes from service to BTP, the infrastructure. The government itself is spending a lot on infrastructure. As you may be aware, we are a huge country with a huge potential, and we are in lack of electricity, lack of infrastructure. So we are funding this infrastructure, and also, as you may be aware, FDI up to 60%, as I said, and service and BTP infrastructure are the key sectors that are driving the non-mining GDP growth.
So there is still a need, though, for more investment into some of these projects in order to support that non-mining GDP growth. Does that come, again, from tapping the Eurobond market?
Yes, all of these resources that we're going to use. I mean, we're going to be funding hydro plant, key and critical infrastructure. So this is going to help us moving forward. I mean, I can say, critical minerals are strategic asset for DRC. But resilience comes from what we build around this critical mineral resource. And this is what we've been doing since 2019.
And Minister, maybe just finally, investors still, of course, are a bit concerned about what we've seen in Eastern Congo with the fighting that has gone on for decades. How much of a concern should that be for investors? How much has that factored into the discussions that you've had this week?
The consistency of policies that we're putting in place, the macroeconomic performance are assuring investors. Security concerns are there, but what is more relevant for them is what we're doing in keeping reforming the country, in keeping improving governance and tightening fight against financial crime.
That was Congolese Finance Minister Doudou Fwamba Lekonde. And for more, we're now joined by our Chief Africa correspondent, Jennifer Zabazaja, who conducted that interview. There seems to be momentum behind the DRC right now. I guess the question looking ahead is, how sustainable is this growth momentum?
Exactly, Jumana, especially if you point to some of those statistics that you were just pointing out, which we heard from the IMF, which is that the DRC is going to overtake Ethiopia in terms of the growth of the economy. So, yes, there does seem to be a positive growth story for the country right now, especially if you consider what they had been through over the past few years. We heard that from the finance minister. Supporting some of the growth has been, of course, the mining sector as the world's top cobalt producer and the second largest copper producer. But really what the minister continued to reiterate to me during our discussion was that the government is really set on continuing to build out some of the non-mining sectors, and that is where they see potential for sustainable growth. He mentioned that foreign direct investment has actually increased 60% since 2019. You heard him there referring to some of the reforms that we've heard from the government, and some of the investment that they're seeing that go into and that they're focused on are things like hydropower and transport. And so, yes, mining has, of course, continued to support some of the growth of the economy, but from an investor perspective, what might help continue to make it sustainable in the long term is diversifying outside of just mining. But still, the real concern, and he mentioned this here, and I think it's still worth noting, Eastern Congo is a real security concern for investors. We have seen the government put in some of their own initiatives in order to address this, but still, it remains sort of the cloud over what is still a positive growth story in East Africa.